September 30th, 2010, meeting of the Cod Commission is called to order. And I'll ask the clerk if he would kindly call the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Barnstable, Royden Richardson.
Present.
Bourne, Michael Blanton, present. Brewster, Elizabeth Taylor. Chatham, Lynn Pleffner.
Present.
Dennis, Richard Roy. Eastham, Joy Brookshire.
Here.
Falmouth, Mario Di Gregorio.
Here.
Harwich, Robert Bradley. Mashpee, Ernest Virgilio. Orleans, Peter Munger.
Present.
Provincetown, Austin Knight.
Present.
Sandwich, Joanne O'Keefe. Truro, Peter Graham.
Here.
Wellfleet, Roger Putnam.
Here.
Yarmouth, John McCormick.
Here.
County Commissioner Representative Sheila Lyons. Minority Representative John Harris.
Here.
Native American Representative Mark Harding. Governor's appointee Herb Olson. That is the roll, Mr. Chairman. Looks like we have a quorum.
Thank you very much, Mr. Secretary. Now we will have the executive director's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just going to update the members on the state has a wastewater infrastructure finance commission. Senate President has asked me to sit as her appointee on that. It's broken into 4 different subgroups, and it's very consistent with what's happening in the Cape as it relates to wastewater financing now. And so a lot of our efforts around wastewater now are being incorporated. And in many ways, I think the Cape is the poster child for the need for some sort of new financing program for capital wastewater infrastructure. So we will be, that committee won't report on a final report probably until next June, but I will keep you posted as we go through.
Related to that, some ways that we began our Watershed Tour last week in 3 Bays, the 3 Bays area of Barnstable. And we had about 40 people that showed up at that at our first Watershed Tour meeting. It was a good meeting. I think we took our PowerPoint presentation out for a spin, and we're making some improvements to that. But people reacted very positively to meeting as a watershed and to looking at the demographic information presented on a watershed by watershed basis. So we will be moving next to Lewis Bay. And so we'll be meeting on the 7th next week at the Mattakese Middle School at 7 p.m. So I encourage as many of you as would like to attend, and we'll have more reports back from that. And then finally, I just wanted to mention, Mr. Chairman, that the first meeting of the county's Vegetative Management Committee that's looking at the issue of herbicides is meeting tomorrow at 9 a.m. Over at the Superior Courthouse. Thank you.
Thank you. And with some apologies to the public, I omitted public comment. It was not my intention. Are there any members of the public who would like to comment at this time on any item that is not on the agenda? All right, thank you. The minutes are next. We have minutes here from the 24th of June. I want to take them one at a time. If somebody would like to move that we...
I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes of June 24th.
Second.
Is there any discussion regarding this? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstentions? It's unanimous vote, and thank you very much. The next set of minutes is August 5th, 2010, and the chair would entertain a motion that they be accepted as distributed.
So moved.
Is moved and seconded. Any discussion regarding these minutes? Ready to vote? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstentions?
I abstain here.
The abstentions are noted. Thank you. And the last set of minutes to be acted upon today are the minutes of our August 19th, 2010 meeting, and the chair would entertain a motion that they be accepted.
I'll second it.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion regarding any item? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstentions?
Abstain.
Abstentions are noted. Thank you very much. All right. The next item on our agenda is a public hearing regarding the Provincetown Waste Treatment Telecommunications Monopol project, I guess is what I want to say that. And as soon as I get my notes here, we will ask Michael, the clerk of the commission, to read the hearing notice.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hearing notice, the Cape Cod Commission, Provincetown Waste Treatment Telecommunications Monopol, September 30th, 2010. The Cape Cod Commission will conduct a public hearing on Thursday, September the 30th, 2010, at 3 p.m. in the 1st District Courthouse, Assembly of Delegates Chambers, Route 6A, Barnstable, Mass. The following development of regional impact, or DRI, has been referred to the Cape Cod Commission under Section 13A of the Cape Cod Commission Act, 716 of the Acts of 1989 as amended, and Sections 3 and 7 of the DRI enabling regulations. The purpose of the final hearing is to allow for proposed corrections to and comments on factual information contained in the draft written decision. This notice is being published as required by Section 5 of the Cape Cod Commission Act. The project name, Provincetown Waste Treatment Telecommunications Monopol. Project applicant is T-Mobile Northeast, LLC. Project location, Provincetown Wastewater Treatment Plant site located at 200 Route 6, Provincetown, Massachusetts. And the project description, T-Mobile is proposing to construct a wireless telecommunications facility that will consist of a monopole structure situated within a 1,872 square foot fenced compound. Attached to the monopole will be 9 panel antennas. Associated cabling will run down inside the structure to equipment cabinets located on a precast concrete pad inside the compound.
Thank you very much.
Mr.
And
Chairman?
I understand that the subcommittee has 3 sets of minutes that need to be approved, and
Mr. Chairman, before
Yes.
we do that, I have to leave and recuse myself for I am a selectman in Provincetown. I want to leave at this moment here before we get far.
we'll let you know when the item's over.
Thank you.
Yes.
And for the record, Paige Sapega, Regulatory Officer with the Commission. There are 3 sets of minutes.
Yeah, I was going, oh, you're going to ask for those, okay. Go ahead.
If you could make a motion on each one separately, please. The first set of minutes is the August 10th, 2010 public hearing.
I make a motion that we accept the minutes of the August 10th, 2010 public hearing.
Or do you want, this is subcommittee? Are you chair of the
Subcommittee.
Subcommittee?
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstaining? All of those who are here. And the next one?
I make a motion we accept the August 10th, 2010 subcommittee meeting minutes.
Second? Oh, sorry. I've been here long enough, I should know better. Sorry. We have a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstaining? And the last one, Joyce, since you're on a run here.
I move that we accept the September 22nd, 2010 subcommittee meeting minutes.
I'll second that. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstaining? Thank you.
Thank you. Next will be the staff presentation of this particular project.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before I begin, I'd just like to draw your attention, you should have a red line page in your packets. It is page 6 of the draft decision. It just adds details to the testimony section from the August 10th, 2010 subcommittee meeting, and it just provides clarification and elaborates on the subcommittee's discussion regarding the tower's fall zone. An overview of the presentation you'll hear today. The first is the existing conditions. I will then discuss the proposed project, Cape Cod Commission jurisdiction. I'll give you a brief overview of some of the key findings and conditions from the subcommittee decision, and then discuss the conclusions. The project is being proposed on property that is owned by the town of Provincetown. It is currently the site of the Provincetown Waste Treatment Facility plant. And the photograph behind me is taken from the eastern side of the proposed cell tower leased area. The site is a disturbed area that was previously used as a burn dump, and as you can see in the photo behind me, it has been capped and is now revegetated with natural grasses. The applicant is proposing to install a 92-foot high monopole. At this height, the tower does not require any lighting by the FAA. The tower will be within a 39-foot by 48-foot fenced compound. There are 3 proposed equipment shelters, and the tower will provide co-location opportunities for up to 3 additional carriers, for a total of 4, and 2 of those are T-Mobile and AT&T. The utilities will be installed underground using an existing utility easement, and the facility will be unmanned after installation and will just simply require maintenance approximately once a month. The project qualifies as a DRI under Section 3I1 of the Commission's enabling regulations as a wireless tower that exceeds 35 feet in overall height. It was referred to the Commission on March 31st through the Planning Board by David Gardner, who is the Assistant Town Manager in Provincetown. A site visit was conducted on June 20th, and it was attended by the subcommittee. It was also a crane and balloon test, and I'll discuss those further later on in my presentation. The hearing period was opened by a hearing officer on May 28th, and on August 2nd, the hearing was continued by a hearing officer in order to allow time for the photo simulations to be conducted. And August 10th was the date of the first substantive hearing, where the subcommittee took testimony on the project, and August 25th, the hearing period was closed by a hearing officer. There were 2 subcommittee meetings held on the project. The first was on August 10th, immediately following the public hearing, at which the committee deliberated on the project and voted unanimously to recommend approval with conditions to the full commission, and they also directed staff to draft a decision. And on September 22nd, the committee reviewed and amended the decision and voted unanimously to forward the draft decision to you at your meeting today. As the date of the first substantive public hearing was August 10th, the project was reviewed subject to the 2009 Regional Policy Plan, as amended in May 2010. And it was also reviewed under the requirements of the Technical Bulletin 97-001, which contains guidelines for DRI review of wireless communication towers. And David Maxim, the Commission consultant, reviewed the project for compliance with the Technical Bulletin, and he is here if you have any questions, but I'm just going to summarize some of the findings in the decision that relate to the Technical Bulletin. Excuse me. The Technical Bulletin is organized into 2 sections that provide guidelines on dimensional requirements of the tower and also on design standards. The dimensional requirements is broken down further into requirements for the tower height and then also setback and fall zone requirements. And the design standards contain sections for the camouflage and buffers of the tower, the color, and the equipment shelters. The subcommittee found that the project is consistent with the tower height requirements of the Technical Bulletin, and that the tower does not exceed the height limits of the zoning district in which it is located. There are no residences within 300 feet of the tower, and also the monopole design is consistent with the recommendation for taller structures. The subcommittee also found that the tower is the minimum height necessary in order to provide sufficient coverage to the cellular network and also provide adequate locations and height for additional co-locators. The subcommittee found during the review of the project and the information submitted to date that the project complies with the building setback provisions of the zoning district and Provincetown's own wireless telecommunication towers and facilities fall zone requirements. The Technical Bulletin contains its own fall zone requirements, and it defines the fall zone as equal to the height of the tower to any property line, dwelling, road, business, or institutional use. A small part of the Provincetown wastewater treatment plant building is located within the fall zone. And however, the Technical Bulletin allows the subcommittee to reduce the fall zone requirements by up to 50% if they find that it is appropriate and will result in, if they find that it's appropriate and that with this reduction, the project can be considered to be consistent with the fall zone requirement. And the subcommittee did make both of those findings and is recommending that to you today. The tower is currently proposed as consisting of unpainted galvanized steel. This will be allowed to weather over time to a light gray color. The subcommittee found that this is consistent with the Technical Bulletin's approach of painting the tower a light gray or blue in order to blend it with the sky and the clouds. The equipment shelters are also being designed with traditional Cape Cod styles and with traditional materials and will be contained within a chain link fence. The subcommittee found that this is also consistent with the technical bulletin requirements pertaining to equipment shelters. The subcommittee determined that the project is consistent with Land Use Minimum Performance Standard 1.2, which is compact development, as it is located adjacent to the treatment facility and thus maximizes continuous open space. They also found that the project is consistent with Minimum Performance Standard LU 2.2, which is co-location of telecommunication facilities, because the project provides co-location opportunities for up to 4 additional co-locators, as I mentioned before, including T-Mobile and AT&T. A determination of no adverse impacts from Mass Historical Commission, or MHC, has not yet been issued, and this is needed for compliance with Minimum Performance Standard HPCC 1.3. The Commission received a letter from the Mass Historic on August 30th, which asked the applicant to take into account comments from the Provincetown Historical Commission, or PHC, and it also attached a letter from the Provincetown Historical Commission, which listed the following concerns, those being height, monopole design versus unipole design. The Provincetown Historical Commission felt that a unipole design would be less visually intrusive, and that is essentially a pole that has all the antennas contained within it and doesn't require any external arrays. The Provincetown Historical Commission also asked the applicant to consider changing the color to a light gray and had questions regarding if the FAA or Federal Aviation Administration was requiring lighting. Upon receiving this letter from Mass Historic, the applicant met with Eric Dre, who is the chairman of the Provincetown Historical Commission, David Gardner, the assistant town manager, and commission staff to discuss these issues on September 13th. The applicant is currently exploring the option of a unipole. However, they do need to ensure that it would provide adequate coverage for all co-locators. On September 17th, the Commission received a letter directly from the Provincetown Historical Commission, which voiced 2 remaining concerns regarding the possibility of changing the design to a unipole and the color. However, the 2 issues from their original letter to Mass Historic have been addressed, and that is the issue of the height and if there is any FAA lighting required, which there is not. There is a condition in the decision, is condition HPCCC1, which requires the applicant to consult with Mass Historic and the local Historic Commission and receive a determination from Mass Historic that the proposed tower will not adversely affect any significant historic or archaeological resources. This effectively approves the project that is being proposed today, but if any changes do result from discussions with Mass Historic or the local Historic Commission, it allows them to come back and simply modify this decision. Excuse me. Additional conditions for the Heritage Preservation and Community Character section are for each carrier or future co-locator, there is a condition requiring the submittal of exterior lighting plans and specifications, and it requires the Commission to go out for a site visit to measure the foot candles to ensure that the exterior lighting will comply with our exterior lighting technical bulletin and minimum performance standard HPCC 2.11, which contains conditions for exterior lighting. There's also a condition which requires submittal of elevation plans for the proposed equipment shelters, and this is to ensure compliance with the Technical Bulletin equipment shelter design guidelines, which include the use of traditional Cape Cod styles and materials. For the issue of solid and hazardous waste, there's a condition which requires a written plan that will address management of any construction and demolition waste that will be generated by the preparation site work, and a condition requiring a copy of a contract with a licensed and registered company to dispose of any hazardous waste that may be generated by the equipment shelters. Oops. Behind me you see the 5 findings for approval. In order to approve the project, it must be consistent with the minimum performance standards of the regional policy plan. And the subcommittee is recommending that with the conditions contained in the draft decision that the project does comply with the minimum performance standards of the regional policy plan. It also must be consistent with local zoning bylaws and with the local comprehensive plan. You should have an email in your packets today from David Gardner, who's the assistant town manager, dated July 22nd, that indicates the proposed tower does comply with both. He has had a chance to review the draft decision, didn't have any comments on it. However, he was unfortunately unable to make it today. The project must also be consistent with any district of critical planning concern, and the project is not located in a district of critical planning concern, so this criteria does not apply, and the project can thus be considered to be consistent with it. And lastly, the probable benefits of the project must outweigh any probable detriments. The subcommittee is recommending that the probable benefits do outweigh the probable benefits, and this is outlined in condition GF5 of your draft decision. However, this is a subjective test, and you can certainly discuss this in more detail today. Lastly, the subcommittee has unanimously voted to recommend approval of the project with conditions. Before I finish, I'd just like to note 2 additional letters we just recently received that should be in your packets. The first is the Commission received it on September 29th. It is from the Chairman of the Provincetown Airport Commission in support of the project. And you should also have a letter dated September 28th from the Chairman of the Provincetown's Board of Selectmen, also in support of the project, stating that at a public meeting held on September 27th, they unanimously voted to support the T-Mobile Northeast LLC's application for this tower at the waste treatment facility. I'd be happy to answer any questions, and Michael Johnson, Site Acquisition Specialist, and Ed Perry, Attorney Ed Perry, are here for the applicant as well. And David Maxson, the Commission Wireless Consultant, is here also. Thank you.
Are there any questions from the commission that need to be asked at this time, or can they wait to after the applicant has made their presentation? Yes, Mr. Harris?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Sapega, you mentioned an email that's in the package received 22nd of July or the 22nd of September?
It was the 22nd of July. David Gardner, he came to the public hearing. However, he also provided us an email to the subcommittee back in July. It was inadvertently left out of your mailing, but it should be in the packet that you got off of the table today. I could dig out an additional copy for you as well if you can't find yours.
Any other questions? If the applicant would please come forward, identify yourself, and make your presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission. My name is Edward Parry, P-A-R-E. I'm an attorney at Brown Rudnick, One Financial Center, Boston, Massachusetts. I'm here representing T-Mobile, the applicant today. First of all, I do want to reference a couple of points that were made in the letter from the Board of Selectmen, which the Commission members received today. T-Mobile has been at this site since at least February of 2008, so we'll be entering our 3rd year as the clock changes soon. The project has undergone a number of changes. Initially, we came in and to provide the most robust service possible and to provide co-location opportunities. We proposed a tower height of 153 feet. During our FAA study, it was determined that the height of that tower would have to be lit and marked, creating some visual impact in the area. To achieve minimalization of the impact, we lowered the tower height to 92 feet, which is the maximum height which the FAA will permit where the tower doesn't have to be lit and marked. So during that process, and it's a long process with the FAA, we got approval to proceed with the 92 feet, discussed the project with the town, and came up with what we think is a best solution here. Behind me in a very low-tech presentation is, I've put sheet C3 of our zoning drawings, which you all have in your packet, but it gives a pretty good description of what we'll be installing and where it'll be installed on the site. It's an aerial shot of the waste treatment facility. As you'll see as we come off of Route 6, there are some dotted lines which show the existing utility easements. We'll be picking up power from an existing transformer, so we have minimal disturbance there. Where the property has already been disturbed, we'll put underground utilities, standard electricity and telephone running back to the Monopol itself. And if I may, I'll flip the sheets. On sheets Z1, which is appearing now in the lower right-hand corner, is an elevation of the proposed monopole. You'll see that T-Mobile has the top slot at 92 feet, and then there's co-location opportunities for 3 additional carriers. Initially, AT&T Mobility has expressed an interest, has sent a letter to the Cape Cod Commission noting that interest, and we expect that they will co-locate on the facility as soon as it's constructed. Our next step, assuming we get a positive recommendation and approval here, we have a pending application with the Provincetown Planning Board. We are under current discussions with the Selectmen and the Provincetown Historical Commission to deal with the issue of a unipole versus a monopole and to address those concerns. I'm quite confident in doing hundreds of these facilities that we will come to a resolution at some point in the near future and get this project underway. I would like to commend the staff. I've done a number of sites before the Cape Cod Commission. Paige and the folks that worked on this particular project have been very helpful, very cooperative, very timely, and I give them our highest regards for being responsive to our requests and modifications as we went forward. I'd be happy to respond to any questions any of the commission members have, and I do appreciate the time, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. That's the presentation of the applicant, sir?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Does the commission have any questions of either the applicant or the project? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question that deals with Heath Gatlin's letter and your proposed RF coverage. It seems to me that Heath is saying that coverage will be at the airport, but your chart does not show it. Which is correct?
Could you identify for me? I'm not sure who Heath. Your reference to a letter.
He's the chairman of the airport commission. Sent a letter.
I'm going to get out my plot coverage map, but I do believe that his letter is correct. Thank you.
Do you have a copy of that with us?
I'm going to return this to you now.
Thank you.
The depiction that you see on our map, and our radio frequency engineer couldn't be here today, but I will ask the Commission's consultant to weigh in on this also with greater expertise than a lawyer. But you'll see that the green depictions of the T-Mobile coverage are both for in-building and in-vehicle coverage. We will get coverage out to the airport. That's one of the main purposes of the site. So anyone outside the airport or people in the building certainly should be able to get some coverage. The green on those plot maps would be the most robust coverage, so that if you were in a building in those areas, you'd get voice and data coverage. Or if you're in a vehicle, as you get to the lighter green, there will be coverage at the airport. As I said, it's one of the objectives. It will not be as robust as in-building coverage that we're projecting, but for radio frequency purposes, I'll ask Mr. Maxson to address those specifically.
Thank you. Thank you, I think.
Yeah, I know.
Good afternoon. For the record, my name is David Maxson with Broadcast Signal Lab, consultant to the Commission on this matter. And the plot with the computer estimated coverage from the 92-foot height does show that T-Mobile's desired signal strength for a very reliable service to people who are inside vehicles does not make it out to the airport, at least in a consistent way that it would show up on that kind of a plot. But there are a couple of things to consider here. One is that the applicant originally applied for, or contemplated, a much higher height, 150 feet or thereabouts, which would have had a bit more of an advantage of angle on the distance to the airport and the rolling sandy dune terrain between. So to some degree, they've in accommodating the requirement or the desire to get below the height for FAA lighting, they have sacrificed their ideal signal strength. But as I've discussed in my report and in the materials that the applicant has also submitted, the only coverage of any significance in the Provincetown area comes from facilities. Other wireless companies have facilities on one of the wharf buildings and residents over on Bradford Street. And the way the terrain is, those signals do not get out past Route 6, where the proposed site is, and they certainly have no opportunity to be at all useful out at the airport. So one of the things that the applicant did partly at our request, and I think they also wanted the information as well, is that when we they conducted the crane test at the site, erected a crane to the height of the proposed structure. They also put an antenna on it and sent out a test signal. And they drove around with a vehicle with a test antenna on it and produced, which is also in the record, these, they're called drive test maps. And what they show is the actual measured signal strength from the facility if it were actually in operation, which for the roads that you're driving on gives you an even more precise view than the computer estimates do. And what we see is that as you get out towards the airport, if you're in a low area, the signal level does fall below their desired threshold, but for the most part, does not go so far below their desired threshold that it is a significant, that it will significantly compromise the cell phone use. What it means is that if you go into a dip between two hills on the way out to the airport, you'll have these little spots where the signal may get scratchy, and for most calls it should be able to be carried through. If you're out at the airport, you'll have a similar situation where, depending on where you are, fortunately it's an open area, which helps, the signals will be just below and just above their desired threshold. So it doesn't reach the airport as well as they'd like it to, but it's good enough, I think, is probably the answer.
Are there any further questions from anybody on this particular issue? All right. Are there any other questions or comments from the members of the commission? Elizabeth?
As part of this discussion, I would just like to remind our subcommittee members and tell the members of the commission that there were a number of people who wrote in and showed up at the subcommittee meeting who emphasized how poor cell phone coverage is in Provincetown and how desperately they need this. So I think it's very important to remember that. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments, questions, observations? I don't see any. Yes. Mr. Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick question with regard to the recommendation by staff and also the subcommittee with regard to the reduction of the fall zone and its possible impact on the wastewater treatment facility. I'm just curious to see if staff had anything to say about whether or not that posed any kind of danger for that facility.
Fall zones are often defined by the name fall zone, partly for aesthetic purposes and partly for safety purposes. Generally, these structures, the vast majority of these structures do not fall over. I can count probably on one hand the number of places across the country where a monopole of this type has literally failed at the base and tipped over. And it usually has to do with things like poor construction technique. So it is important, and the carriers, as owners of these facilities, generally do pay very close attention to those things in their construction techniques and review of things. So in a very few cases, there have been towers that have toppled of this type. If you consider that there are tens of thousands of these kind of towers that have been put up over the last 15 years and experienced very rugged weather, a full toppling is not a risk, really significant risk at all. The other failure modes that these towers will experience is that more typically, if there is indeed, for instance, excessive ice loading and excessive wind that exceeds the structure's design characteristics, usually times 2, that could cause a failure, which typically occurs in the form of a buckling, like a straw, a drinking straw might buckle. And often the towers stay up, but they just will buckle. The other thing is these structures are built to the TIA standard for steel antenna support structure, steel towers and antenna supporting structures, which is a very rigorous computer-based, it's updated regularly, standard, structural engineering standard that ensures that for this locale, the weather conditions, the wind conditions, the potential icing conditions are all factored into the design of the structure. So the likelihood of a tower failure of any kind is very, 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 very slim.
Thank you. Did that sufficiently address your question? Yes. Chairman?
I'd just like to comment that as our chair of the subcommittee, Elizabeth Taylor has noted that there was little or no public opposition or town opposition to the Monopol being erected, and in that area, there are very few abutters, if any. So if you look at the map, you'll see that it's in an outlying area. And again, there was, when we talked about safety in the subcommittee, and I can stand corrected, but there was more of a need in order to communicate to family or friends. If you're on a beach, couldn't be reached in a boat, the weather had changed so that family members could get hold of you if you were either a resident or tourist of Provincetown. Thank you.
Thank you for expressing your opinion. And when we get to talking about the motion, we will remember what you said, and thank you. Yes, anything else? All right, we'll go on to ask, are there any testimony from federal, state, or local officials? None. Thank you. Are there any members of the public here that would like to speak at this time? There are no members of the public here who would like to speak. Okay, good. All right, I would ask that at this point that we move to close the record and the hearing, and then we move on to moving to approve with conditions the Provincetown Waste Treatment Telecommunications Tower draft decision as modified today. And I think once we make the motion, then we'll have the opportunity to have discussion. So, motion to close the record and the hearing.
I move to close the record and the hearing.
Is there moved and seconded? All in favor will signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstentions? Did we tell the gentleman from Provincetown that, no, we are not finished yet. Excuse me. Okay. I just was thinking about him outside, and I know what it means to recuse oneself and be out there and be forgotten. So it's on my mind. All right. So the motion is that we approve with conditions the Provincetown Waste Treatment Telecommunications Tower draft decision as modified today. And is there,
So move.
it's been moved, is there a second? Second. Okay. Now we're open for discussion, and we'll remember what Joanne said, and thank you very much. You don't have to say it over again.
Same thing over. But I always like your direction. But if this is the right time, my first time going through that process, I think that I probably got a course in not only procedures but regulation and planning. And I just think that the staff did a wonderful job in that the subcommittee, if you saw the amount of work that we went into, even traveling on a bus, and the cooperation of the town. I just would like to make that mention for the record. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, and we all agree with you. We have a wonderful staff. Is there any other comments? All right, ready to vote? All in favor will signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? It's a unanimous vote, and please go out and get the gentleman from Provincetown. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll go grab Austin.
Okay, thank you. Next. Public hearing, Windrift Acres procedural denial. Andrea Adams, please.
That's all right.
Okay, folks? We all here? Paying attention?
Now it is. You'd think after so long. Push the button. Anyway, thank you, Mr. Chair. For the record, my name is Andrea Adams. I'm the Cape Cod Commission Senior Regulatory Planner. In your packets for the mail, or that came in the mail, you should have a memo, but this is also a public hearing, so we'll need a hearing notice, which I think Mr. Blanton has.
Yes, please, Mr.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Hearing notices with regard to Windrift Acres. The Cape Cod Commission will conduct a public hearing on Thursday, September 30th, 2010, at 3 p.m. in the 1st District Courthouse, Assembly of Delegates Chamber, Route 6A, Barnstable, Mass. The following development of regional impact, or DRI, has been referred to the Cape Cod Commission under Section 13A of the Cape Cod Commission Act, Chapter 716 of the Acts of 1989, as amended. The purpose of the final hearing is to allow for proposed corrections to and comments on factual information contained in the draft written decision, a procedural denial without prejudice. This notice is being published as required by Section 5 of the Cape Cod Commission Act. The project name, Windrift Acres. Project applicant, Peter Kopelis. Project location, off Slough Road in West Brewster, Mass. Project description, proposing an approximately 22-lot residential subdivision on 55 acres of land in West Brewster.
Thank you very much. All right. Andrea Adams, please.
Thank you. Again, you should have a number of items in your packet, one being a memorandum under my signature, a copy of the draft written decision dated September 20th, a copy of an email from the applicant's attorney, Mr. Eidman, who's in the audience today, along with Mr. Dan Ojala of Down Cape Engineering, a copy of the Town of Brewster referral form. Basically, what's before you is a request for a procedural denial without prejudice. As was read by Mr. Blanton, the project is a subdivision of land off of Slough Road in Brewster. It's 55 acres, so it's subject to Cape Cod Commission review as a mandatory DRI. We received the referral in early May and opened the hearing period by hearing officer on July 1st. The 90-day hearing period expired on September 28th and was closed by hearing officer on that date, hence why Mr. Blanton had the hearing notice. The applicant was given an opportunity to go before the Standing Regulatory Committee on the 13th, I believe, of September to say their piece in front of the committee or to the commission through a committee, pending the procedural denial. And the reasons why the procedural denial was even considered is that we had not been able to receive a completed application from the applicant. They had filed some materials on August 31st, but staff review of that deemed that it was incomplete. And as I noted, the 90-day hearing period had to be completed, or closed rather, on September 28th. So there was insufficient time to complete the review. And as I said, the applicant had failed to submit a completed application. The recommendation of the Regulatory Committee at its meeting was to recommend to the full commission to allow a procedural denial without prejudice. I'd now like to briefly go over a few small changes that were made to the draft decision that was included in your packet. The reason being is that the commission clerk, Ms. Hanley, has a signature copy of them for the chair if you vote to allow the procedural denial. I would note that the word draft was taken off the decision. That in the materials submitted for the record on the third page, I included the hearing officer minutes of September 28th. So that concludes my going over the few changes that were made to the draft. You don't have the final copy in your pack, but I just wanted to let you know that those changes were made to the potential signature copy. That basically concludes my presentation on the project. And again, both the staff and the Regulatory Committee recommend that the full commission grant the applicant's request for a procedural denial without prejudice.
Is there anybody from the applicant's side that would like to speak at this time?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the record, John Eidman for the applicant, Peter Kopolis. I won't go over the material Andrea went over. It was all factually accurate, and she stated that case well. I will not clarify or request a change, but just to clarify something in the decision. Before the Regulatory Committee, we appeared. It appears that I came across very negative about the potential about working with the town, or perhaps even the town of Dennis or water district, that this land may be purchased. I didn't want to come across that negatively. There's still a potential. The applicant's still working with the towns to discuss a purchase. We even saw Mark Robinson recently, unfortunately, trying to work with them for a potential purchase. They had a lot of funding commitments at the time this was being proposed. We continue, and we're hopeful to continue to work with Mark Robinson of the towns to maybe talk about a potential purchase of this land here. So I don't think it requires any change in the decision, but just to clarify some of the statements made before the Regulatory Committee. We do have applications before the commission. Unfortunately, as Andrea stated, we didn't leave enough time, given the timelines within the Cape Cod Commission regulations, to have both a scoping session for a limited DRI as well as a full review of the DRI application. As Andrea stated, there are some what I would characterize as minor required submissions that we need to provide at this point, but I would say at this point we're ready to go almost immediately with those few minor submissions upon a grant of a procedural denial without prejudice. So thank you. And again, the owner's son is actually here, Peter Kopolis, and also Dan Ojula from Down Cape Engineering, if you have any questions of a technical nature, anything we can clarify. So thank you.
Any other people from the applicant side that want to say something? Okay, good. Not good, but good. Okay, any questions from the members of the commission at this point? Yes, Julie?
At the regulatory meeting, I had a senior moment, and I thought that this development had come before us before, which it had, and we voted to give it a procedural denial without prejudice before. And it's back, and I know that the applicant is pursuing two options. One, to sell the land to the water district of Brewster and Dennis, and two, if that doesn't work, to build a subdivision. So my senior moment was a weak one.
Do I see any other hands? I don't see any other hands. All right, is this any people from federal, state, and municipal? Want to say none, I guess? Well, I guess somebody can move that we grant this procedural denial without prejudice. It's been moved, seconded?
Mr. Richardson?
Yes.
It's a public hearing, so you should ask for public comment and then probably close the hearing in the record.
Oh, I thought I did, but I didn't, did I? All right, this is a public hearing, and we don't want to keep the public out of the opportunity to speak. So before we proceed, anybody from the public like to speak? I don't see anybody. All right. So the next thing, there needs to be a move to move to close the hearing.
Second.
It's moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? All right. Now, somebody can move that we grant a procedural denial without prejudice in this matter.
I so move, Mr. Chairman.
It's moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? I didn't leave anything else out. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstentions? It's passed with one abstention. Thank you. All right, the next item is a public hearing, and there's no hearing notice with this. So I will ask Andrea Adams to come forward. You're right there. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, Mr. Chair, Andrea Adams, Senior Regulatory Planner. This is a pending procedural denial without prejudice for a project in Sandwich called Forestdale Village. You should have had a packet on this. And I would note that Attorney John Fitch is here for the applicant. Basically, same sort of thing. Project was referred to the commission in early May and was unable to complete the review in the time allotted, primarily because of difficulty with information in the application not matching up. The applicant requested the procedural denial without prejudice on September 16th by email and was given an opportunity to address the regulatory committee on the 27th of September, where the recommendation was to recommend to the full commission a procedural denial without prejudice. Oh, and there's no hearing notice because this particular hearing was continued from September 16th, 2010. I don't have anything else to add to that, but I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions? Andrea? Mr. Fitch? Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm John Fitch. I represent the applicant. This particular project, like the former one, has already received one denial without prejudice, one procedural denial. And this is a commercial proposal that is going along with a 40B housing proposal that is handled at the local level. And Andrea is exactly right. We have had a change of personnel. Some of the information submitted with our application through our engineers at the time didn't seem to be supportable. It didn't match up with some of their staff's calculations, and we had a change of engineering, and it caused a little delay. The project that is under your review continues to enjoy broad local support and will be brought back. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions of Mr. Fitt? So I guess we can move ahead with the motion at this time. We don't have to close anything, do we?
No, you do. It's a public hearing just as before. It was just continued, so you should probably follow the same procedure of asking for comments. And once those are completed, if any, closing the hearing and the record.
Would somebody move that we close the hearing and the record? Is there a second? Moved and seconded. All in favor will signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Any abstentions? It's unanimous vote. So, somebody needs to move that we grant a procedural denial without prejudice to the Forest Dale Village project. Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor will signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Any abstentions? It's unanimous vote. Thank you. Okay. Now, public hearing, proposed amendment to Technical Bulletin 97-001, guidelines for DRI review of wireless communication towers. And Christy Sanatori is, no, we're going to have a hearing notice first. Michael.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a quick one. The Cape Cod Commission will conduct a public hearing on Thursday, September 30th, 2010, beginning at 3 p.m. in the 1st District Courthouse, Assembly of Delegates Chamber, Route 6A, Barnstable, Mass. At this hearing, the Commission will consider proposed revisions to Technical Bulletin 97-001, Guidelines for Development of Regional Impact Review of Wireless Communication Towers.
Christy, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the record, Christy Sanatori, Chief Regulatory Officer for the Commission. As Mr. Blanton stated, Technical Bulletin 97-001 provides the guidelines for DRI review of wireless communications towers. What you have before you are one minor technical change, and that is in Section 7B of the Technical Bulletin. This section allows the Commission to retain an outside technical expert to assist the Commission in the review of the wireless tower projects. In accordance with Section 16 of the Commission's DRI enabling regulations, if the Executive Director of the Commission determines that the services of an outside consultant are needed to assist in any aspect of project evaluation, the project applicant will pay for these services. This payment is generally in addition to any DRI application fee. The Technical Bulletin as it exists today actually states that the cost for such technical expert is included in the DRI application fee, and so staff is suggesting some clarifying language and suggests that that sentence be stricken from the Technical Bulletin and that language be inserted in its place. And this language actually tracks the language that exists already in the DRI enabling regulations. And the additional language that's being suggested is provided for you in your packets, and it's shown on mine in blue, but yours may just be underlined, but I'll read it for you, the language. If the Executive Director of the Commission or his or her designee determines it will require the services of an outside consultant, technical expert, to assist in the project evaluation, the project applicant will deposit with the Commission an amount of money estimated to cover 100% of these services. If this initial estimate is insufficient to adequately review the project, the applicant will provide the additional funds necessary, and any funds not expended at the conclusion of the review will be returned to the applicant. This is the only minor change that's being proposed at this time. I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any. If the Commission finds the change is acceptable, I would suggest that upon closing the hearing in the record, you could make a motion to approve the minor amendment to the Technical Bulletin governing review of wireless communications towers.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions for Christy? None? Would somebody like to move to close the record in the hearing?
There may be public testimony.
That's right, there might be. I see two people out there. Any members of the public like to speak? I don't see that they want to, so thank you. Anybody want to speak? All right. Somebody would like to move that we close the record in the hearing? Second? All in favor will signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? There was no opposition, it's unanimous vote. Thank you. Now, the next
Mr. Chair?
item- Yes?
I believe you just closed the hearing in the record. You might want to approve the technical
Oh, I
amendment.
thought we did, didn't we? I guess we didn't.
Thank
All right,
you.
thank
Chairman,
you.
I move that we approve the changes.
I need keeper.
Technical.
Thank you. Okay. Is somebody moving that we approve the material as has been presented, the Technical Bulletin 97-001? All second? Second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstentions? Unanimous. Other business? No other business? Any Cape Cod Commission member comments? No comments? John? Oh, wow.
Microphone, please. I attended an executive director's meeting earlier part of this week, and I was present for a really very interesting presentation, which I think that the public should be made aware of, and then somehow we figure out how we can, beyond the public notification is done on a website and also in the media, we let people know what the commission is doing and how they're leading the charge as far as the issues concerning water, wastewater here on the Cape. The presentation is really outstanding. The only thing it doesn't do is that it doesn't stand out on the corner and catch every other citizen by the throat and pull them in and make them look at what's going on, because there's a serious problem going on here, which we can perhaps refer to, and I don't like to refer to anymore, but it's the frogs standing in the water and someone is increasing the temperature about 1 degree, and this is a situation where it's real. It's really happening here. And I think that our executive director has done an outstanding job with his staff, giving him all of the meaningful information in a presentation. And we can tell them that, tell the public that this information is available on the website. But we may have to come up with some sort of a, I don't know, sticker or something, some sort of fear process to make people understand that we're not trying to scare them, but we want to make them aware of what's going on, what needs to be done. The water issue, I don't think, is really being addressed very seriously. Since I've been a member of the commission, I think it was the first year I was involved with a process called Cape Keepers, and I considered that it was a very important project. And I used to hear something about it on the radio every once in a while, but the problem that brought about this process, which the commission participated in, has grown, and it's growing each year, and we need to do something about telling our neighbors, our colleagues, our friends, our enemies, because this water problem is something that we all are sitting on and we all contributing to, and that's what this one of the brochures, and not the posters, says that if you live here and you flush a toilet, you're part of the problem. So that's it. I just think that we need to do that, and it's nothing that our outstanding executive director can do to pull people. We all have to pull together to make this happen. So I know that all of you here are very talented and know everybody who should be known, and we should do something to bring this more in the face of the public. I would say on a weekly basis, because it's really quite serious. Thank you.
Thank you for bringing that to our attention, Mr. Harris. And I think you're absolutely correct that we have to have all sorts of ways of communicating. And I think even just as in our packet today, we had The Reporter, which is a periodical that the Commission publishes, I'm not sure how often, monthly at least. And it does talk about that. And I think to add a little bit to what you had to say, that water is not just a local problem, And it's not just a national problem, but it's a worldwide problem. I happen to be a member of the Osterville Rotary Club, and one of our big projects is clean water, and we constantly contribute funds for that to help in developing countries too. So we're all in this together, and I think that maybe we could explore some other means of getting attention on the radio, news blurts, whatever, that kind of thing. All right, is there, okay, I keep losing my place here because everything is white when you get up here, all this white paper. But anyway, are there any other Cape Cod Commission members who would like to comment? Yes.
I would just like to add to John's remarks and state that in the town of Falmouth, when they have been trying to do an outreach to their citizens beyond the planning boards and the zoning boards and the water district people and the boards of selectmen, they held what was called sewer socials. And this was a way to I guess, make people feel like, we'll give you tea and crumpets, so come and listen. And I don't think it's a bad idea for each of us to consider ways, since we are all members of this body, of how we could reach out to our individual communities, because I do sense that once we go beyond the boards of the elected people of the town and we go to the citizens, they see, and even the people on those boards, but there is more of a consensus as to a direction that we could go into, that we could go forward in collectively. So I think that the more education and the more exposure that people do see to this watershed series and presentation that is now being conducted around the Cape, if there's ways that we could actually individually help, spread that word or have that information available to our local neighbors, we should maybe consider that and, individually assist in this, because it is very worthwhile information while towns are going forward. And I think if everyone was aware of different alternatives and options that we have to go forward, there could be more of a consensus more quickly built across the region. So that's just my, so I'm asking everyone to do a sewer social, I guess is what I'm, or something of that nature.
Not to belabor this point, but I was listening to an address that was given on public radio, and one of the comments that was made that 30 years from now, 75% of the inhabitants of this planet will live in cities. And I was just thinking, ooh, it's pretty remarkable. In order to deal with the water waste and all that sort of thing, that's the way it's done. Public wants to say something. Come right up. This is an exception.
This is an exception, just in line with Mr. Harris's comment and the chairman's comment. I'm Dom Gautreau from Centerville in Chairman Richardson's old precinct. CNBC has a special on, I think it's this evening, about fresh water throughout the world. And it's a very, very informative documentary and very frightening about the fact that the world only has 3% fresh water, and it's diminishing. And according to what Mr. Harris said and the chairman and the other comments, people might be interested in watching that very, very important special, because it goes back to everything that we're facing here on the Cape and throughout the world.
Thank you very much. That's very helpful. Are there any other comments? Yes, Joy.
I sat and listened during the executive meeting, and Paul's presentation was really good. And coming from Eastham and surrounded by Wellfleet and Orleans and Brewster not so far away, we're all looking at wastewater treatment and my town, municipal water. And the regional approach just seems to make sense in light of the fact that my town and Orleans and Brewster and Wellfleet don't seem to be doing anything where we can agree to be regional. And I'm Eastham's representative manager to the Tri-Town Septic Plant. And we're closing in 2015 if we don't decide to go further as a region. And the nightmares are beginning to come. So I think the regional approach just makes so much sense. And I think we need to take a dog and pony show to the towns faster, sooner than later, to help them out.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just today, I had bulletins on the internet, and also I was watching television on the MSNBC, I think it was, and they were talking about specifically bottled water, and the fact that water you buy in a bottle has been marked up 4,000 times. And in the manufacturing of the bottles, it takes 3 bottles full of water to manufacture the jug that it goes in.
Yes.
I appreciate that this has created quite a bit of substantive input. And one thing I will just say that when we are doing all of this, we talk about educating the public. And I think education is great and awareness. But I think it's even more important that we develop action plans, something that people have to do. Because all of us educated, but how many of us, whether you're a mathematician, a scientist, an engineer, how much of the applied science set do you really apply? Not very much. It's really a situation here where we need to apply all of it. And as we were talking here, I think that one of the probably a very important one, and I can arguably be thrown out for it, but I think that our education system, and that is our schools, the ones who will be inherited in this place in 30 years from now, are the ones who should in fact be working on it. And I don't know if you notice it, but young children are rather smart, and they're rather clever. They come up with great ideas how to do things. When us old people stand around and come up with all excuses why we can't, they simply start to do something. So I would certainly hope that we can come up with a way that we can come up with an action plan that says if we do this, and if we do this in an environment which in some worlds it's related to actually doing brainstorming. And the basic rule of brainstorming, the really basic rule is that you have to accept everything. You can't say no. What you have to do is give it a thought. And I think that the children will show you something that you haven't seen before. So that's it. Thank you.
Well, that's been very interesting departure. I've appreciated John bringing it up. And Paul, you want to say something? Oh. Well, anyway, I'd be willing to accept a motion to adjourn. Second? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Abstentions?